right, welcome back to the Heretics Review with Nick and Andrews. And today, oops, got ahead of myself. We're going to be talking about the Tangerine movie versus The Martian. Both of these were 2015 movies. They actually were, I think, in the theater at the same time. They competed in the awards ceremonies at the same time. So I think there's kind of a relationship between these two movies, and it's funny because I talked to my wife about this particular face off, and because we're starting a new series which is kind of this versus battle, one movie versus another. So we're not just looking at an individual movie, but kind of how it compares to a different movie. So I told my wife about this, and she thought it was a terrible idea. Because she thought these are completely different movies that have nothing to do with each other. But I actually think that they are strangely related. I think they're related in theme and tone in some ways and not others. So Nick and I have both recently rewatched these movies, and I think it's at least a better experience than the last one we went through, which was Don't Look Up. So fair to say these movies are both better than Don't Look Up.
Well, I would argue that The Martian was like scratching a chalkboard for me, but I powered through it. I even watched the extended version.
Well, I did not have a very flattering opinion of The Martian the first time I watched it, but the second time I watched it, actually had a little bit more. I don't know. I think I respected it a bit more. I understood what they were going for. I think that I had been a bit overwhelmed by some aspects of The Martian the first time that I wasn't able to really, see the different pieces. But so just as a kind of a brief rundown, what we have going on here is The Martian, $108 million budget, grossed quite a bit more than that, $630 million worldwide. It won Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture and was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, and has very, very good scores on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. Okay, and this is Ridley Scott. Of course, Ridley Scott's famous for, man, what isn't he famous for? Blade Runner,
Alien movies,
everything, right? He's done everything. So yeah. This is a veteran director who definitely knows what he's doing, and the cast is pretty phenomenal. It's just looking at this on paper, you just have to love. I mean, most of these people have been in many other productions, very easily recognized names. So everything is pretty top of the line here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, actually. You go back to that list. It's unfortunate, of course. It's like, you have it in the order that it should be, but really Matt Damon should be like by himself, and then the next page would have the other characters, because really the other characters probably had a total of about 10 facial expressions throughout the whole movie. So,
yeah, and the one that's not on this list that I probably should have put, except for he was only there for like 5 minutes, is Donald Glover.
Yeah, Donald Glover.
yeah. He has like 2 minutes of screen time in this.
Yeah.
He does well, I think, in that 2 minutes, but it's not much.
Yeah, for a musician, he's a very good actor.
He is a very good actor. I agree with that. Okay, so Tangerine is obviously a completely different concept, and the execution of it was totally different. 100,000. It's hard to think about that, but that is like literally 1,000 times difference in the budget that went into this. So the guy's obviously shooting this on an extremely low budget. So he shoots it on iPhones, which is totally novel. The whole thing is shot on iPhones. And I know that, Nick, you probably didn't care for that particular aspect.
No, it's one of the things that, one of the reasons why I didn't like the Blair Witch Project either, because I have very bad eyesight. I can't accommodate very well, and so for most people who can't accommodate with their eyesight, that shakiness, the blurring in and out, it can cause nausea. So
Yeah.
so it's a very low quality. Now the story, the acting, top notch, but man, as long as you can get past that motion sickness, it's a fairly good watch. Very exciting, very riveting. But again, you can definitely tell that it is a low budget movie.
Yeah, and
So,
I have a lot of admiration for the production here, because it was very ambitious to do something like this on such I mean, an incredibly low budget. I think that, you're right that they would have benefited from, better camera work and, better equipment. And at the same time, I feel like it forced the filmmakers to really take advantage of, to kind of like be very conscious of every setting, every element of it. They really did this on a shoestring, and I think they really put a lot into, a lot of thought went into every part of this. So, and I would say, as a contrast to The Martian, I thought The Martian maybe had a little bit extra. For example, even the cast, I thought it was there's so many stars, so many, like when you're going down on your bench, and Donald Glover is, like someone you can just pull in for 2 minutes. It's just like they're clearly able to spend a lot. But did that make them economical in how they chose to do that? I felt like maybe there was a bit of fluff in The Martian, whereas this story, if there was a scene that served a purpose, and the filmmaker had to really be very focused on making the most out of what they had. So I kind of like those sort of low budget films, because I know that there's so much thought that goes into every scene. So this obviously did less well, although it certainly beat back from its budget, grossing 10 times its budget, and also did extremely well on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, despite not actually being nominated for really anything of significance.
I'm gonna have to go a little bit further in this, and to say that Tangerine was actually much more realistic. The actors in there, man, that was some real stuff. There was no makeup per se. Everything was basically like real life. Whereas The Martian, everybody on there had perfect skin. Okay. It reminds me of the opposite of Castaway, with Tom Hanks. After about a day on the beach there, he was, his skin was peeling. It was much more realistic. He didn't have the energy. I mean, you have Matt Damon on a, like the best, most realistic thing that they showed on there was a picture of him getting out of the shower after, a year or something like that. And he's kind of like skin and bones. And that wasn't even real, it was CGI. But most of the time, everybody on there, whenever I see a real picture of an astronaut just coming down from, a mission, they look emaciated. They look like they're about to die, the pale, this and that. But if you look at the movie The Martian, it is like, oh, we're just getting out of our trailer and we're going to go do the scene for about 30 minutes and go back and eat. All right. You look at any Survivor show, and I like to watch Survivor series. I saw all the Survivor Man, and even just watching Bear Grylls, for example. Even though he might have probably snuck over to a hotel every now and then, but just spending a night out there in the wilderness, you're not going to look like Matt Damon. Okay. Well, so they spent a whole lot of money to make them look pristine, is what I think. So.
I think on that front, and that would be another versus Castaway, that you're absolutely correct, that there is a lot more authenticity to, like, you feel like Tom Hanks, as he's going through that, is truly there. I mean,
you felt it.
You felt it the whole time. His sense of loneliness, because in the case of Matt Damon, it did feel a bit painted on, whereas there was a lot of desperation in Tom Hanks's portrayal
Yeah, his
that
wow, absolutely right.
that didn't
Yeah,
really seem as I mean, take for example in there's a journey that takes place at the end of the movie, and that journey is supposed to take like, I don't know, 4 months or seven
yeah,
months or however long it takes, right? He's got to travel from one place to another. And that's just like a quick montage, it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
no big deal. Anyone who's
Yeah,
been in the
and he sleep underneath the vehicle. Why not? It's Mars. It's pretty safe
yeah,
with
anyone
all the
who
tornadoes in the background.
has been on a lengthy car trip, you
Yeah,
know, it's difficult. I've been on a 27-hour car trip, and I'm sure you have too. Um, and those are grueling.
yeah,
That's hard.
yeah,
Um, you know, I one time I went off and I parked. This is 4 a.m., 2 a.m., some really late time. I parked. I was so tired. I parked. I got off the freeway and just onto some rural road in the middle of nowhere with a farm. Just farmland. Just nothing but farmland. There's literally nothing out there. And so I parked my car and I put the seat back and I went to sleep. And I woke up because I don't know how or what the hell it was, or if someone was pranking me or what happened. But I woke up because I felt like the car was being shaken and beaten
yeah,
on. Like
yeah,
someone had taken a baseball bat to the car I was in. And I woke up and I look around and I'm like, what is happening? Nothing. There's no one there. No
yeah.
damage, no nothing. I must have dreamt it, or I don't know what
Yeah,
happened.
it gets pretty vivid out there when you're out by yourself.
But it was alarming. And that was just me on a 20-hour, trip. Can
Yeah,
you imagine what a
yeah. No, I mean,
four
I
month?
yeah, I mean, after after the first couple of scenes where the storm hit, and he survives and he drags himself into his tent or whatever, and there's like he's impaled by this kind of stick out of his gut, and he just patches it up, staples it up, and goes about his business. Oh, it bleeds a little bit. Oh, the staple came out.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's Matt Damon. It's Jason Bourne. I can patch myself up and you know start a farm up here on Mars.
Well, and I think on the contrasting side with Tangerine, I think you're absolutely right that did feel extremely real. That
Yeah,
it felt like, I mean, you didn't want to assume that the people in this movie had actually lived the life they're portraying.
yeah,
But it sure felt like it. It's just
yeah.
like when the main character, well, I guess the other main character, Cindy. I felt like Cindy was extraordinarily authentic.
Hmm.
Like every part of, as much as the main character, um, Alexandra was authentic. I felt like the character of Cindy, who you also follow through part of it, she was just phenomenal. I mean, I really,
Hmm.
really felt like that was a real person, and everything she
Yeah,
was going through was just extraordinarily authentic.
yeah. For
Um,
me, like, to tell you the truth, I can't remember any of the names or the faces. I just remember the faces and the situations they were in. It was really difficult for me to follow it because of just trying to, orient myself
well,
to
this is Cindy,
the
and
yeah,
this is Alexandra.
yeah. And
So
there wasn't
that's
there like a female in there that got rejected because she was a female.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was a pretty funny scene. We'll talk about that in a second. But
Yeah,
but I feel like this is a cast that, I mean, you probably can't recognize any of the names on this,
yeah.
and that
No.
and they've, as far as I know, really not done anything beyond Tangerine that you could recognize them in. I'm sure they have other roles, but there's certainly nothing like the cast here that we see with, like you go down Sean Bean. I mean, really, like
Yeah.
obviously these people, Sebastian Stan, these people have huge careers, uh,
Mhm.
and nothing happens here, these even though the performances are obviously pretty good all the way down. I mean, when you think
Yeah,
about,
it's every one of those guys. I was waiting for them to not act right, but they all acted like as if it was happening in real life. So it was. I mean, obviously, some of those situations were kind of hairy, but they fit their roles pretty good.
and as you start going down, I actually really like, and watching it the second time, I came away with that impression as well. I really like how from A to Z, when you start going down the list of people, there's really good performances, even down to the bottom. So for example, like when you get to Chester, which is this, I think it's James Ranson. At first he comes off as such a crazy character, like who is this person? But he too has a sense of authenticity that is kind of the crazy person that you expect to be in this situation.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and Dinah, when Dinah is sitting outside her
uh-huh.
hovel, being rejected and she can't go back in, I felt a lot of sympathy for her. I thought
Yeah,
that Dinah's performance in this, as being dragged around the city, was pretty good.
yeah,
And here, a la Timanian, you have the mother, that's the mother-in-law, who exposes the whole thing. So she has a lot of conviction in that too. And then Karen, Kagulian, that's the Raznik, the driver. And he's great. You know, his I felt like he was kind of a complex character but he didn't, like I think that in a lot of cases that level of complexity is played up because it's complex to you and I because we're not them. But to him, he's not complicated at all. To him, it's his life and it's what he does. So he didn't actually seem very complicated. From his own perspective, he didn't seem
yeah,
complicated. We think he's complicated because he's balancing these different roles or ideas, but he played it just straight, just completely flat. Like this is normal. That's what I mean by that, by the way. Um,
mm.
no other context. No other connotation, but he just played it like it was a complete normal thing for him. And I felt like his infatuation with Cindy was sincere. uh, and that was, again, and he's not the star of the show, but he's still doing well. So
Yeah,
okay, so now kind of this is just my observations, and then we'll let this go. But my observations is that the themes that these two shows have in common, these two movies have in common, is that they're both about survival. Because you have Alexandra and Cindy, um, surviving on the streets, in Los Angeles on one side, and you have um, I don't even remember Matt Damon's character's name, but they have Matt Damon.
Watney or something.
Well, yeah,
Watney,
that
something
Watney.
Watney. Yeah, I don't know his first name.
Yeah,
Was it
uh,
Michael Watney,
something like that.
Matt Watney. Some I don't know.
Surviving on the other side, and I say the other theme is, and I think it's almost like it's one of those things that's so obvious in Tangerine that you don't think about it. It's just right in front of your face, but you take it for granted. And that is that as prostitutes, their lives are literally valued in dollars. They're everything about them is, you know, and I also think that there's this issue of, kind of going to the the bottommost ring of where we as a society find value in people, and how at that level they're forced to um they're forced to sell parts of themselves for money. And you know and I liked being taken on that journey because I feel like sometimes perhaps there is romanticism, like the Richard Gere movie with pretty women, that somehow there's that this life is somehow romanticized. And I feel like this story did a good job of taking away some of that romanticism. Like when you go into where Dinah is and there's all these people just crowded around with these Johns, that it was a very unglamorous, a very raw experience, and that there's a consequence, there's a cost, and it ends up being that it's because it's because of how little we value these people that they are forced into this situation, that they wouldn't, and I felt like that was the journey with Alexandra, is that she tries to sing, she goes to sing, that's her ambition, but it's pointless. She has two people in the audience for her, that she has little chance of ever realizing that dream.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is, those who were in The Martian, that whole cast, that whole crew, everyone there was very privileged, and they led a privileged life. They grew up, they went to school, they did all the things that most people would consider to be, privileged. I guess that's the word that I'm thinking about. And they did all the things that they were allowed to do by whatever social norms or society allows them to do. And then you have in Tangerine, these people are kind of stuck, and they're kind of doing the best they can in whatever situation they're in. They are not privileged. As a matter of fact, they have to take their privilege. They have to earn their existence, right?
Right.
Every day. Whereas in The Martian, he went to school, he went to college, he went to, whatever it was. Everybody there were all, in some respect, top of the class of whatever they were doing. You even look at the bottom rung, Donald Glover's character, right? He was the, I guess, Einstein kind of person stuck in a room, and he just enjoyed doing that. And he just got out for 2 minutes and solved the problem. But he got whatever he wanted. He came into the room with Jeff Daniels, the director of NASA, and he just directed them to do whatever. He didn't care about their titles. So here's a guy that was pretty much, I don't care about your title, I'm here to solve a problem. Here's the thing. Whereas, can you imagine a character like that stepping into the diner where Alexandria and Cindy were, talking to people like that? You see? So it is two different classes of society there that is, I guess, being portrayed here. And you have the one class where there is some sort of kind of more normalized or more accepted like hierarchy, president, director, all the way down to scientists, to military, so on and so forth. There was a scene in The Martian where the captain of the Ares, she was Jessica Chastain. She was saying, well, you and I are military, so they'll accept us, but these guys are civilians, so they're supposed to be doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. So there is that. I think when they said that, it was basically like, we're going to go, pick up our guy, screw whatever, the director of NASA says, or the president says, we're military, we're going to do it. And then you have in the Tangerine, there was basically the only order that they had there was like pretty much who they were afraid of the most, right? I mean, it's like, remember, that was pretty much whoever can hit the hardest was in Tangerine was the thing. And then what really like, I guess, so I watched the whole movie, and then the very last scene I thought was like the most telling scene of, it was almost like if the people in the society of The Martian came into the society of the Tangerine, where a guy drives by in his kind of decked out SUV and splashes. I can't remember who it was, but splashes one of them with a
Cindy.
cup of splashes her with a cup of what probably was pee. That was basically, that very last scene was basically how those who viewed the Martian, those who view the Martian as normal, feel about the society that they were in.